Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the cyberspace world of tokens, tokenization, and blockchain. I'm here today with a couple of guests. We have Joel Dietz, and we have
Adri Wischmann.
Adri Wischmann.
Wischmann, yep.
Yep. So
Unpronounceable.
I'm Gerard Vandenberg, or Leon, or LG. I'm the CTO for the Energy Working Group for the blockchain tokenization with 2 tokens. And today we've had a working session, an expert session in the room where some mindful people around some thought leadership to do with regulation. Today we're going to talk about, well, how do we put some of these thought leadership things into motion? And we have with Adri the Multi-knip wallet, which is a blockchain approach for municipalities for energy and other benefits, for community benefits deployment. And a very old contact of mine that I found out he had some Dubai fatigue and landed in his Birkenstocks into North Amsterdam is Joel Dietz. I've been tracking and chatting with Joel and some of his cadres through a number of years. I think it's now been almost a decade or more. And Joel has been involved in early stage MetaMask, some other interesting projects, and I think there's some good introspection. My company, Sonified, is building ways to digitize and tokenize solar and storage infrastructure. And we see that solar is going to become more of a community asset. We want to see it engaged so that it can have benefits for democracy. We can have fair and equitable access and ownership of solar. So while we're building this kind of technology stack, how do we face the consumer? How do we get the stakeholder benefits balanced? And I just really would like to kick off with you to explain a little bit about Multi-knip, the projects that you've had some success, and then also where you're leaning into the next stage of things. And you're also in the sandbox, the European sandbox as
Correct.
well.
Yeah.
And then I'll sort of interpose Joel, or Joel can interrupt you and say, okay, here's some thought bubbles or maybe some good pieces around it. It's a very casual conversation, and let's get into it.
Yep.
So go.
Okay, great. Like I said, my name is Adri Wischmann. Adri like in Adrian. And I've been working in this space for the last 7-8 years. I am the chairman of Blockchain Lab Drenthe, and I've got my own company where we developed a wallet which can hold a multitude of tokens. We started with Multi-knip, and Multi-knip was a project in a municipality of Emmen where we distributed a subsidy from the government to all the citizens, but they were only allowed to spend that money, that subsidy, on energy-saving products. Right? It was a subsidy to increase the energy efficiency of domestic housing. So they could only buy LED lights and other stuff to lower their energy bill. Well, that was a huge success. It was a very big contrast in the way they worked until then, where they sent out paper vouchers, and everybody perceived blockchain as the big energy burner. So why would that have something to do with sustainability? So it took 11 months of talking to the municipality, and then we built everything in 4 months. So more talking involved than building, and we distributed 50,000 wallets, and within 1 week we became the largest public services blockchain project of the Netherlands. That also says something about the Netherlands, with 50,000 wallets being the biggest project. But that started a development. We did a number of other projects with, for instance, employee benefits for a municipality of Heerlen. We did a project to combat energy poverty. Everybody knows the energy prices tripled or quadrupled in the last years.
Yeah, around the world even more.
So, so people who were already on the minimum side with income got into financial trouble and couldn't pay their energy bills anymore. So the government in Holland set aside 200 million euros to be distributed to these people. And 6 municipalities came and said, listen, we want to distribute 5 million euros to 20,000 families. But we have a small problem because we know these are people on really minimum income. And if we just give them 250 euros cash, the chance that they will use it for lowering their energy bill is minimal.
Yeah, they're going to buy lottery tickets and booze.
Yeah, or go a weekend to Paris, or use it to help with other debts they have.
So just to roll back, what's a knip? Because I know the word, so maybe some English speakers won't.
So I invented this word, energy knip, and now multi-knip. A knip is a Dutch word for
change
a wallet,
purse.
a money purse.
Okay.
Everybody knows these money purses where you have these two kissing metal buttons for closing and opening it. And the sound it makes is knip. And the Dutch word for such a wallet is a knip.
There you
go. We had the energy knip, which could hold this money for this energy subsidy. And now we have multi-knip, which can hold a multitude of different kinds of tokens for tourism, for health, for anything else. But
just something simple like that as a mental hook for the Dutch community, that was okay, just a way to get that easy onboarding, right?
Exactly, yeah. And what was very necessary is that we had a very simple app, because we had customers from 8 years till 88 years, right? We even had the grandpas and the grandmothers getting such a QR code. And so the only thing in the app you see is what I have and what I did as a transaction. And if I want to do a transaction in a local shop, I only have to push 2 buttons. I have to scan the QR code and press yes. And that's it. Because lots of people in the blockchain space are talking about when is mass adoption going to happen, when we have an app which everybody wants to use. And that there's blockchain inside. That's something which we think is very important, but to the rest it isn't. So people are just looking for a smooth way to do a transaction, a fast way to do a transaction. So in multi-knip you only have to push 2 buttons, and people don't even know there is blockchain inside.
And someone who was there early was Joel, I guess, with some of your work with MetaMask and how that became, I guess, more of a de facto standard. And before that, there was other wallets.
Yeah. Before we were talking about that, I had a browser extension before MetaMask that I made, and before that I had a QR code driven payment system that worked in co-living and co-working communities in Germany, Italy, and some other places. So it's very interesting to get into these kind of, I don't know, like incentivize for participation in certain types of circular economy or other types of kind of regenerative use cases that I think come out of it. I think that's very, very
well, regen, reuse. We see that this is happening in a number of communities. We see that the Dutch have a cooperative, let's say, a principle in their DNA. It was way back a few centuries ago. The polder, my Opa and my Opa's Opa dug the ditches to push back the ocean. And if you were not part of the polder, if you did not pull your weight, you were basically peer pressured out of the community. So there's a real sort of cooperative way that these organic community infrastructure models grew here. And we see that if you find the right incentives and the right ecosystem benefits, that you can get that engagement. And then once you have people onboarded, then you're using it for multi-knip.
Yeah, well, there are a few psychological things happening, right? So you are rewarding people to do something, either answer a few questions or help somebody else or whatever. And people, when they are incentivized, are motivated to go even further than you expect them.
Yeah.
Right. So in that first project with the Energy Knip, the municipality said we want to distribute that money, but we also want to get to know these people, how they perceive energy, how they use energy in their house. Because a municipality knows nearly everything when you live there, right? If they have your address, they know what your house is worth, how many people live there, if you have a dog or a cat, etc. But they don't know how you perceive energy. So they wanted to have answers to a few questions, but it had to be GDPR proof, right? A big thing, municipalities and large organizations in general have this allergy for the word data leak, right? So don't store any personal information. And what we did was we generated QR codes, and these were randomly distributed in a neighborhood. So the municipality didn't know which wallet would go to which house. And people could answer these questions freely. And there were questions, for instance, do you switch off your television set in the evening, or do you put it on standby? Or do you close your curtains in winter, or do you leave them open? And behind every question, we would have an information button explaining them why we asked that question. So do you close your curtains in winter? Information knob would say, well, if you do, it could save you around 4% on your heating bill, right? So we would give them also a little bit of awareness. But people wanted to answer these questions because they got a reward. They got tokens, and that's a superpower, right? We have a superpower because we can give out tokens, and people will do anything to get them. Right, so
this gamification in a way, or let's get
and there was an aspect
let's get the dopamine cycle going.
And there was FOMO, the fear of missing out. So I showed the balance of the account of the municipality, how much money was there left, and it would go down every minute. Right, so people had a sense of urgency. I have to answer these questions because if I wait for a week, it'll be gone.
So you got to do one round, and then basically you convince the municipality about the engagement. You're able to then do another round.
The municipalities saw that in the year before that, the same amount of money they wanted to distribute, only 16% of the money was claimed. Only 1/6 of the money. Now 100% of the money was claimed in 13 days. Right. So they decided there and then to double the money, and that was gone in 11 days. Even faster, right? So it was a huge success, and people got used to using a wallet on their phone. That's when I got in contact with the Dutch National Bank. So listen, we're generating our own tokens. Are we allowed? Are doing something illegal or not? Well, are you generating these tokens out of thin air, or is there any
what's the backing?
Money backing it? And now there's 100% backing. Okay, you can go ahead. But they were talking.
It's an e-voucher in a way. So,
an e-voucher, like €20 bill is an e-voucher.
Yeah. So Joel has been involved with a number of gaming systems and infrastructure around early incentives for democratized investing, Swarm Fund, and different ways that you were going to, I guess, try and democratize this sort of distributed investment mechanism. It was quite innovative at the time. There was no real infrastructure or regulation. There was no way to get that done, but that got done eventually with Swarm in Germany, I believe.
Yeah, that's one reason why I'm here to the 2 tokens and excited about that is I think when we started all these processes, there were no regulations and not even really regulatory bodies to speak to, I remember I was the first person to call the SEC, and I was explaining what we were doing. We had just run we were running this conference at Harvard University, at Harvard Berkman Center and Law School about tokenization and what could be done there. I called the SEC. I said, do you want to participate? They said, we don't really care what you're doing.
Looks like games to me.
And then I called them after we were done, and I gave them the report, and they were like, well, everything you need to know is really just on the website. Come back in a few years or something.
You're just playing with math, right?
So it's challenging if you want to do something that is regulated or is in a regulated category and have to basically do that. And I'm thankful that even though it took a couple years, that the German regulatory authorities were receptive to it. And I think there's so much more to be done. I mean, we were just looking today at all these different asset classes that are ready. I was fortunate to go in early in Brazil, and I did a deal with BTG Pactual as well on some real estate assets there to tokenize them. So there's and that's just like, even those deals we did are a tiny drop in the bucket of the potential. And particularly when you look at new asset classes, like we were talking about solar and things like that, and then combining them with DAOs and the rest of it. I mean, there's just so much exciting, really high financial yield potential. Anyways, just taking away the blockchain thing. Obviously, these things can fluctuate in value, but just on the core yield of the underlying asset themselves.
Yeah. So
and they're really good for these kind of community incentive. One of the things I wish existed more in blockchain from the beginning, and did exist in some of these other words, is this sense of a broader community kind of coming together. And even though it exists in a way within blockchain, because some people get excited by it, at the same time, other people perceive it a little bit to be divisive. Whereas in these other cases, almost like the whole community can be winning together at the same time through these type of things. So,
but isn't it part of because how we talk to the people? I mean, lots of people who are in the blockchain community are there because it is crypto, because there is a potential for a lot of profit, etc. Right? That draw them into there. But is that the not to me? That's only a very small aspect of the blockchain world, right? The monetary aspect. I always say, well, if we design an app which everybody wants to use, they are hungry to use it. That there is blockchain inside is nice, but it's not why we would buy the app. Maybe you and I, right?
But only the technologists would appreciate why you want to do that operationally. So
people buy cars, not engines, right? So they want to buy a nice car which goes fast, etc. And if it's an electric vehicle or if it's a V12. As long as it goes fast and etc., then I would buy it. And that's the problem in the crypto world, because most people only think about the dollar signs, etc. But you can design a fantastic product, man. You probably had some projects where you're very proud of. But how many people from the user side are not interested in crypto, right? Only of using it, because then you would have mass adoption. Everybody would like to use it because of the way it's user friendly, the way it's easy to pay with it or whatever. But now there are too many people, in my perspective, who just buy it because there might be a profit in the future, right? And
speculative assets, and also this concept of MEV, right? Maximum extractable value. If you're building something for the commons, technology for good, you're not there to create an extractive yield, right? You're trying to create something that has circularity. There's a benefit there that is a social good, a network effect. And I guess that's why we're leaning into our challenges here for deploying solar assets. But solar is just one part of why I'm involved with 2 tokens. We're really looking to create this ecosystem that has these positive network effects around community and technology for good, and really trying to unbundle the regulatory burden on this. We're trying to find that streamlined path. And for me, it's to allow this kind of permissionless innovation, but almost in a way that has a feedback loop. As Cory Doctorow called it, adversarial interoperability. It's like we can break some of these paradigms and broken silos because we can have an attack vector that they cannot really entertain nor stop, right? So blockchains are unstoppable that way.
Yeah, and I think in general around every type of community design and telecoms infrastructure and transportation infrastructure, there's always something that's new, that's on the horizon and needs some place to get going,
of course.
Talking about flying cars, or there's so many different levels in theory you can do being a transportation infrastructure at, but then if you don't have a space to do it, then it's never going to happen. And so you have to have some version of a free zone, of a sandbox, of a whatever, and at some time, or at the end of the day, and I think some block people are really excited about this. Some other people are really excited about, but we're designing the cities, the nation state level infrastructure of the future for whatever emerges out of that stuff. So we have to have places where we can really roll out and show the coolest stuff and figure out how it works together.
So this municipality playbook you've done is kind of like your sandpit or your what's the future of what multi-knip will be, right? You've got this kind of boundary condition around a municipality. How can we take those leveraged learnings and then make it grow, right?
Well, there are already national initiatives, right? Germany has something which is called Kulturpass. The German Minister of Culture said, well, the culture sector has had taken a hit during COVID.
Absolutely.
So I'll set aside 200 million euros to help them. But you know what? I'm not going to give it directly to the culture sector. I'm going to give it to every 18-year-old in the country. every 18-year-old received 200 euros, which they can only spend at the culture sector. Right? So they get 50 euros every 6 months to go to festivals, buy music, the theaters, etc. So with
local
€1,
consumption, basically.
yeah, but then on national level, right? So you're with every €1, you're helping 2 parties. And that's something which is popping up more and more. So we're.
I have an idea for you. Maybe we can do one that's an orange token, so everyone can make sure they get their orange clothing. Certain times of the year.
Well, were you here for King's Day?
That will be a big hit here in Holland.
So the drama this past few days, the drama these past few days was the Dutch soccer club lost dismally but they did get into the soccer final. So the power of orange didn't help them that day.
Maybe that orange token would just push it a little bit further.
Oh, it would be a big hit with the soccer club, with Max Verstappen, with etc. The Orange Army,
exactly.
which is involved. Yeah, well, people want to have this kind of products which will make a community out of them.
I think it really adds that feeling of solidarity and excitement.
So tell me about your Burning Man experience, because this is something that everyone's kind of heard of, right? Mm-hmm. You've created infrastructure, and Burning Man is this kind of organic way people come together in a desert and a salt flat scenario, and then they clean everything back up again, right? So it's not just a party fest. You are experimenting with different activities, different ways of creating an ecosystem.
I created a Burning Man camp, and I did some academic work on Burning Man, and I have this pyramid that goes to Burning Man every year. That's a part of this pyramid camp. And I find that it's just interesting. I mean, one of the things that is cool is kind of in an interesting way there, from the very beginning of Burning Man, is centering around certain kind of geometries and it's this kind of old concept really in pan-European global history, etc., to basically take out a space that is a completely new space and then kind of populate it, even with this kind of ritualistic way where we're coming in, and then it gives us this ability to kind of do this resetting. And to do, to a degree, experimental kind of reset of values, because one of the core values there is, kind of immediacy and letting go of your presuppositions, your kind of cultural baggage, whatever judgments you might normally kind of go into. And I think that's one of the places where you get the freest and kind of most innovative spirit too, because we all have so much in a way that it's either a hesitation to act or just some kind of judgment around something, should I be doing this, should a thing? And if you don't have to be in that space all the time, but if you have spaces where you just kind of go with the flow, your own intuition, explore, freedom, no judgment, then I think that actually really also kind of propels this kind of creative spirit.
So for me, I've seen these earth ships where people create different, let's call it cultural experiences, but by building different ways to take waste product to make a home out of it. So car tires are used to make the walls. They're earth bermed. They're using recycled material to do this. There's a great community around New Mexico, I think, that is doing this. I've seen different ways that people are engaging with different types of ecosystem drivers to create a cooperative around farming and farming outputs, but then they create a community benefit around it as well. So cooperatives were quite popular around farming communities, and then there were the cooperative was sold to a megalith, let's call it E-Corp. And you see what is happening is that there's kind of this tragedy of the commons, right? The same thing in South Australia. La Ka-shing is a Hong Kong billionaire that owns the grid of South Australia. The South Australian grid is the most renewables-driven grid in the world, but in order to get any assets deployed and connected to the grid, you kind of have to pay the toll fee to get connectivity to the grid.
Yeah, the monopolist.
So there's kind of a clawback from governments to say, no, we have to take it back from the billionaire class to create a new commons. And what is that opportunity, allow this to happen for equity and fairness, but then even to allow business models to be deployed for equitable access to the grid. So right now, 40 or 50% of your energy bill in Australia is paid for transportation fees. If I'm sending my energy from my solar panel 10 meters to my neighbor, I've got to pay this step function. Doesn't make sense. So there's new ways that we think that these different ecosystems can evolve, where we have apportioned access to shared resources, and we're not having to pay this tax, a grid tax or an upgrade tax, or what they call an augmentation fee to make this happen. So we're looking at new organic ways to create this bottom-up economy. Again, this kind of polder effect. And we see that municipalities are a necessary stakeholder in all of this. They collect your taxes, they provide the municipality benefits that you wouldn't have a community around that. Someone has to pick up the garbage, run the roads, keep things safe, make sure ambulances and fire trucks can get from A to B. So
well, in Emmen, they have something like that with a wind park.
Right.
Wind and solar. So they gave out the license to put in the wind park and the solar, but 20% of all the energy generated has to go to the villages which are in the direct vicinity of that.
The same
wind park.
postcode,
And,
or more.
and you could see how that money or the kilowatt hours are flowing into that society, that community, and they can decide if they want to spend that money on cultural things or whatever, but it has to be for the community. So
just bringing it back to one of the two tokens themes is this kind of power of the many, this kind of collective enablement, and then building technology stacks that have this enablement hook, right? You found this sort of onboarding mechanism, but then I think, Joel, you would have seen some other things work or don't work in these gaming environments as well. And then how do you bring that across to community and culture, right? So every jurisdiction has different culture. We have different property rights across different domains here in Europe. We just had a talk about that, how hard it was to express some of these tokenization things across domain and jurisdiction. So we're really looking for the tooling that allows us this kind of freedom of expression and the way to engage. And that's what you've been doing with
but
with
more or less,
Multi-knip.
right? You need a municipality to take the initiative, right? Because if you're waiting for the citizens to do something, you could wait a long time, right? So a municipality takes the initiative, and then you could have the money flow back to the community, right? And that's taking up a lot of traction at the moment. We see different projects for good and even changing people's perception, right? Because blockchain is that technology that uses a lot of energy, etc. And now we're using blockchain to save energy.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
So that's completely different.
So, Joel, you took me on a tour of some of these eco villages in North Amsterdam the other week. And, it looks like there's some interesting opportunities to deploy infrastructure there. Sonified and our partner GE for All is taking recycled solar panels and then putting them into deployments for community. So there's no capex requirements up front. It is something where you can sort of pay by the hour for solar panels, solar infrastructure. We want to bring other ecosystem benefits to play for community feedback loops, and then finding ways. We really think that gamification is that other engagement hook, right? You found that very simple dopamine play, but we see that there's other interfaces, and I think you wanted to explore some of those as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the interesting things there is something that's this idea of cope or something, but basically these community things, even where non-human things are also kind of included in the decision making. So it's kind of even a broader sense of community and ecosystem, and there's this also opportunity. I mean, we talked about the dopamine and whatever else, but there's just excitement of like, hey, look, we're doing something different and we're bringing people together, and it's maybe a little bit like radical shift in thing, but it's just so clearly aligned with the global future that we all kind of want to see. And we now have the ability to make financial incentives so that basically anyone who participates now can have this huge sort of outsized yield behind it.
And
so
they can be the
building
change
both.
that they want to see.
You can exactly be the change. And you can embody that kind of solar punk flavor.
Yeah, well, let's punk it up, right? Solar punk things.
So I think
So we really see energy abundance, but it's not equally distributed. There's a paradigm shift that's brewing. Everyone understands that that's the mechanism that we're trying to challenge. Thank you for participating today. This is a wrap. We're at about 30 minutes, and it's really good to riff on with you guys. Thank
Pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Please tweet us out, share with your friends, and learn more at twotokens.org. Thank you. Bye.
That was it for today's podcast. Thank you for listening in, and please subscribe so you don't miss out on our upcoming episodes. If you want to get in touch with us, you can find our contact details at www.twotokens.org.